first legend is the cursed and haunted Lake Lanier. Lake Lanier is a man-made lake that was created in 1956 in Forsyth County, northern Georgia. It was primarily designed for flood control, drinking water, and hydroelectric power generation. And even though this lake was never intended to be used for entertainment, it is considered one of the most popular recreational lakes, attracting millions of people each year. However, this lake has a very dark history and a number of unexplained accidents and deaths. The Cherokee Nation were the first living in this land. Unfortunately, in the 1830s, they were forcefully taken out of their own land, and in the process, thousands were killed. Then, it became the town of Oscarville, which was a thriving black community. However, in 1912, there were two alleged attacks on white women that led to the accusation against black men, even though there was no any substantial evidence. The first incident involved a woman named Ellen Grice, who claimed that she woke up in the middle of the night and found a black man in her bedroom. She, of course, started screaming, which made the man run away. She later accused two black men named Tony Howell and Isaiah Burkle of attempting to assault her. Later, an 18-year-old girl named May Crow was walking from her home to her aunt's house when she was attacked. She was found in the woods, brutally beaten and sexually assaulted. Eventually, she died from her injuries. 3 black men were accused of her attack. Rob Edwards was accused just because he was seen near the crime scene. He was taken to a prison cell, but then a mob of angry people took him out of the cell and he was lynched, shot, and killed. Oscar Daniel and Ernest Knox were also accused. Some say that Knox made a confession under duress and eventually they both were convicted and executed. After all this happened, racial conflicts increased and a group of armed white men known as the Night Riders, they just got together and started punishing the entire black community. They will give them a warning to leave within 24 hours or else be killed. The tactics include burning homes and churches, throwing stones through windows, and firing shots into their homes. As a result, 98% of the black community was forced to leave. Then, in the 1940s, the government made a decision to build a dam and a lake. The land that they chose to build this lake was Oscarville. This resulted in the relocation of about 250 families and 15 businesses. Anything that was considered hazardous was demolished, but they also had to relocate about 20 cemeteries. Some believe that the unmarked graves were left undisturbed. There was also a racetrack known as Gainesville Speedway that was abandoned and left behind, and during the drought in 2007, the top of the concrete stadium seating from the racetracks reached the lake surface for everybody to see. Today, we know that even though structures were demolished, debris, tree trunks, gravestone, and even the remains of those unmarked graves were left behind. Once the buffer dam was completed, the water of the Chattahoochee River began backing up, creating the lake and submerging any of the ruins. Strange things began happening in and around the lake once it was formed. Multiple accidents and drowning, and a higher than normal death rate in comparison with similar lakes like Lake Alatuna had led people to believe that the lake is haunted or perhaps even cursed. In total, almost 700 people have lost their life in this lake, and the body of around 27 of them have never been recovered. Several accidents had happened, such as boat explosions, collisions, drownings, and some even claimed that they have seen the victim just disappear under the water without any struggles. There have been also survivors that say that while they were almost drowning, they felt as if an invisible force pulled them down under the water, or as if the water was thick, making it hard for them to swim. There is also a theory that negative energies were released when a sacred ancient burial ground belonging to the Cherokee indigenous tribe was disturbed. They believed that the ancestral spirits placed a curse on the lake. This lake has also been known for the mysterious appearance of a ghostly lady that seemed to be lost. Witnesses have reported seeing her wearing a blue dress while she's walking near the bridge. The worst part is that she is missing her hands. This ghostly figure is known as the Lady of the Lake, and there is a belief that she might be the ghost of Delia Parker Young. You see, in 1958, Delia Parker Young, who was wearing a blue dress, and Susie Roberts were driving a Ford sedan when suddenly they lost control of the car. It is believed the car went over the bridge and into the river. And during the investigation, the only thing that they found were skid marks on the road near Dansonville Highway Bridge over Lake Lanier. However, even after they searched the lake, neither the ladies nor the car were found. 1 year later, a fisherman found the decomposing body of a woman that was missing both of her hands and some toes. Some even claimed that she was wearing parts of a blue dress. Unfortunately, they were not able to identify the woman due to the lack of fingerprints, since she had no hands, so she was laid to rest in an unmarked grave. But then, in 1990, construction workers were excavating to create the foundation for a new bridge, and they found a Ford sedan car that matched the description of the car Susie and Delia were driving back in 1958. Inside the car were the remains of a female, later identified as Susie Roberts. This discovery led them to believe that the body they found in 1959 belonged to Delia, and her unmarked grave was relabeled with her name. Some still claim to see her walking around the lake near the bridge, and that if you get too close to her, she will drag you to the bottom of the lake to kill you. Another tragic accident happened on Christmas Day 1964. The Brown and Rogers family, which consisted of 4 adults and 7 children, were driving all together in one car. Mr. Brown was driving when he lost control of the car, hitting a guardrail and a power pole. Then the car flipped and fell into the lake. The visibility inside the lake was very poor, making rescue efforts difficult. Tragically, 2 adults and 5 children lost their life in that accident. This day is known as the deadliest day in the history of Lake Lanier. There is also the apparition of a shadowy figure that looks like a man. It is said he is sitting in a small raft, and the light of a lantern is seen swinging back and forth as the raft moves. The man uses a pole to kind of propel himself forward. According to the story, one night some fishermen saw this apparition, and when the apparition saw the fisherman back, it started screaming and shouting something that they just couldn't understand. Suddenly, the figure just stood up and jumped into the water, never to be seen again. The raft also vanished, leaving the lake in complete darkness. This legend makes you wonder if the government was trying to erase all the horrible things that happened in the land. Maybe they thought the creation of this lake will make people forget. Perhaps the haunting of this lake is caused by its dark history, or maybe all these tragic accidents are caused by the hazard material that are under the water. Our next legend is one of the most documented ghost stories in history. It happened at the Surrency family home in 1872. Alan Powell Surrency was described by the Deseret News as one of the most honorable citizens of the county. He built a two-story family home in the 1850s in a town later known as Surrency in Appling County, Georgia. The house was located next to the Macon and Brunswick Railway. For 2 decades, Alan and his wife Wealthy lived peacefully in their home with their 8 children: Miller, Sarah, John, Samuel, Clementine, Biggio, Robert, and Laula. However, everything changed in 1872 when strange things started happening at their home. On November 17, 1872, Surrency's daughter Clementine was waiting for her father by the train tracks. The train was running late, and as she was waiting, she noticed a dark figure approaching. Feeling uneasy, she went back home. Suddenly, a rock was thrown next to her. She turned around but couldn't see where the rock was coming from. Being brave, she sat on the porch steps and looked towards the train tracks where she had come from and realized that the dark figure was gone. More rocks landed next to Clementine, so she went inside the home. But when she entered the kitchen, she noticed brickbats, which are small brick ends falling from everywhere. Clementine and her mother called some of the men that were at the house waiting for Mr. Surrency's return. They also witnessed what was happening. Together, they looked everywhere around the house, searching for the source of the falling brickbats, but they found absolutely nothing that could explain what was happening. These strange occurrences started spreading to other parts of the house. Wood sticks were flying through the air, then falling to the floor. Bottles, vases, glassware, pitchers, silverware, and other objects were jumping from their usual places, falling and breaking. Chairs, shoes, and clothing were thrown around the house. The destruction was so severe that the family was unable to sleep. One early morning before the sunrise, a group of reporters arrived to the Surrency home to investigate and confirm the rumors. They entered the house through an open door and waited for the family to wake up. This is crazy to me that someone will just enter the house and make themselves at home. And the crazy part is that when Mr. Surrency awoke, he just greeted them like that was completely normal. And then he just confirmed all the stories they have heard. As he was explaining what was happening, they talked about the family clock. The clock was acting bizarre. The hands of the clock were spinning so fast that some claim it was moving at a rate of 5 hours in a single minute. One of the reporters covering the case happened to be a watchmaker, so he opened the clock and examined it to try to figure out what was happening. However, there was nothing wrong with it. That was not the only thing that they experienced. Suddenly, a brickbat fell with such force next to one of the reporters that it broke in two. They tried to replicate what was happening, so when they picked it up, they noticed first of all it was very hot, and then they threw it on the floor, but they were unable to break it. So he placed the broken pieces on a windowsill, only for them to be once again thrown into the floor and break in two right in front of their eyes. Eventually, words of the mysterious event happened at the Surrency home began to spread, and soon hundreds of people were coming from every direction with the hope of witnessing the strange phenomena themselves. On another day, as the family was having supper in the dining room, a door to the side of the home suddenly opened and closed with a big bang. At first, the family thought it was just the wind, but then again the door slowly opened and slapped itself shut so hard that the entire house shook. Then the windows started acting up too. The windows began to raise and lower over and over the speed increasing as it kept happening to the point where the wood panels started breaking. Sometimes during mealtimes, tablecloths were yanked from the table, causing plates and food to fall in their laps and onto the floor, and at times drinks will be thrown in their faces. Utensils will be bent in odd shapes right in front of their eyes. Big and heavy furniture started moving too, along with pictures and mirrors, which at times caused harm to the little children. Then, Clementine was targeted. It is said that one night while she was in her bed, an unseen force pulled her covers away. Her hair was also yanked, and at one point, she was forcefully thrown across the room. Despite the speculation that the family might be making everything up to profit from the curious visitors, the Surrency family never accepted money from anyone, and in fact, they often provide meals for those who came to see what was happening. The hunting went on for several years, and things were getting more violent. One night, the eldest son was sitting near the fireplace when one of the large andirons, which is a pair of metal stands to support the wood while it burns, suddenly lifted into the air and struck him on the head, causing him to bleed. His younger brother, who witnessed the terrifying incident, tried to grab the andiron and protect his older brother from another attack. Somehow, the andiron broke free and struck the elder brother again. In desperation, he shouted for his brother to run since he couldn't help him. As the eldest brother ran, the andiron followed him and continued to strike him until he lost consciousness. The family had enough. The next morning, they packed whatever they could and moved to another farmhouse they owned on the property. However, the haunting followed them to their new home, forcing them to abandon that house as well. Eventually, in 1925, the original house was destroyed by a fire. And while many believe that the strange events began with Clementine's encounter with that dark figure near the train track, one of the sons later revealed that it all actually started with their mother. According to the story, one day his mother was in her room sewing when she heard a noise in the bedroom. At first, she ignored it, but as the noise continued, she tried to figure out where it was coming from. She realized the noise was coming from the washstand in the room that was rocking back and forth with a pitcher inside a washbowl. Believing it was one of her children playing a prank, she looked around, but she found no one in the room. Suddenly, everything on the washstand fell to the floor, breaking into pieces. What was most terrifying was that the pitcher was suspended in mid-air, slowly pouring water into the carpet before it too crashed in the floor, breaking into pieces. Curiously, the haunting came to an end when Alan Surrency passed away in 1877. Shortly after his death, a new phenomenon began near the Surrency home: the Surrency spook lights. These mysterious spook lights are described as a bright yellowish orb that hovers slightly above the railroad tracks before vanishing. It is wild to me to see all the newspaper clips and the description of what was happening back then and how many people witnessed all these paranormal activities. I am not sure what will I do in that situation. How can you protect your loved one when whatever was happening seemed to follow you to wherever you went? I am also curious to know if all this poltergeist-like haunting was targeting a specific person, and how come it all stopped when Mr. Surrency died, only to be replaced by spooky ghost lights. The reality is that we will never know. Our next legend talks about a water creature that lives in the Altamaha River, located in southern Georgia, famously known as the Altamaha-ha River Monster, or simply Alti. This creature is most often spotted around Darien and Butler Island in Georgia. This legend has been told for centuries, and the Muscogee Cree tribe were the first to mention this monster. They describe it as a giant snake-like creature that hisses. Alti is said to have the body that looks like a sturgeon with a bony ridge, front flippers, and no back limbs. It swims like a dolphin, and its face is a combination between a crocodile-like snout, large protruding eyes, and large sharp teeth. The color is anywhere between gray and green with a wide yellowish belly, and it is believed that the creature measures anything between 20 to 30 feet long and that there might be more than one of them. The next time this creature was seen was in the 1830s, when the Savannah, Georgian newspaper reported multiple sightings of a sea monster. One of the reports came from Captain Delano, who claimed to have seen a giant creature measuring approximately 70 feet long and as wide as a large barrel with a head that looks like an alligator. In the 1920s, a group of timbermen that was traveling in the river reported seeing a snake-like creature. These accounts persisted over the decades, with hunters, Boy Scouts, and even prison officials also claiming to have seen this creature. Then, in 1969, two brothers claimed to have seen a creature that described as 10 to 12 feet long, with a metal gray skin, alligator-like snout, and a horizontal tail with a triangular ridge along the top of his body and sharp, pointy teeth. Time passed, and in the 1980s, two men claimed to have seen Alti stranded in the mud bank, eventually managing to free itself and going back into the water. Another person reported seeing the creature, describing it as being 15 to 20 feet long and resembling a snake with two brown humps. And a crab fisherman described the creature as the world's biggest eel. More recently, in 2010, someone captured a video of an unknown creature moving in the channel of Darien, even though I couldn't find this video. However, in 2018, biologists were stumped. A video showed a creature that appeared to be dead on the shore near Darien. It had a long neck, shark-like fins, and what looked like its guts spilling out into the sand. This creature strongly resembled the Altamaha-ha Monster. However, it later came to light that this creature was actually a creation by Sadulu, which is a New York artist who identified herself as the myth maker. She specialized in creating viral hoaxes as a form of art, such as the three-eyed catfish in the Gowanus Canal. For this particular hoax, she created a creature based on ancient Greek mythology about Heracles, better known as Hercules, god of strength and heroes. And it was about when Hercules sliced open a sea monster creature known as Ketos. For her, the killing of this creature represented how one can overcome anything that frightens you. Sadulu used a taxidermed shark and paper mache to create the creature. She placed it in Darien to elicit the most response because it was the home of the legend of the Altamaha-ha Monster. The amount of records of people claiming to see an unknown creature is unbelievable to me. It kind of makes you wonder, what if there's actually something under the water? I also find it fascinating Sartulu's form of art. It really creates different kind of emotions and wonders in the viewers, which is kind of crazy to me. And even though the last video turned out to be a hoax, the reality is we don't know if there's something under the water on the Altamaha River. The next legend is about the haunted Ellis Hotel, which was previously the Winecoff Hotel. The Winecoff Hotel opened its door in 1913 in Atlanta, Georgia. It was built by William Winecoff and was considered the tallest building at the time. It was advertised as being absolutely fireproof. The first and second floor had the common areas such as the lobby, kitchen, dining room, and waiting room, while the guest rooms were located from the third floor all the way to the 15th floor. Each floor could have up to 15 guest rooms, and it was designed in an H shape, meaning in the sides were the rooms, while right in the middle was the elevator and a concrete stairway. There was only one stairway that went from the first floor all the way to the last floor. The reason it was considered to be fireproof was because it was constructed with steel, brick, and concrete. However, the interior was decorated with flammable materials such as burlap, wood, and wallpaper. It is said that with the years, as many as 7 layers of wallpaper were added to wall on many of the rooms. Now, because this building was believed to be fireproof, they did not use fireproof doors, fire alarms, fire sprinklers, or even fire escapes. On December 7, 1946, around 3:15 in the morning, one of the workers noticed smoke on the third floor. He went to investigate and he found a chair and a mattress on fire close to the stairs. He tried to use the fire hose, but he was unsuccessful. The guests on the third floor started to panic, and everything was in complete chaos as they were trying to escape. All the scream and the smoke alerted the guests in the floors above. However, the fire spread so quickly that it blocked the only available escape route for those on the fourth floor and above. Despite the presence of a central fire alarm, it was never used. Eventually, the hotel manager called the fire department at 3:42 in the morning, more than 30 minutes after the fire was discovered. Firefighters arrived in less than a minute. By the time they arrived, many guests had opened their windows trying to escape. Unfortunately, there were no fire escapes, so guests were at the windows waiting to be rescued, or they created ropes by tying sheets together and they were trying to use to climb to lower levels. On the hotel roof, there was an opening designed for smoke to escape in case of a fire. However, this opening had been closed, preventing the smoke from escaping, which caused the hot smoke to return to the lower levels, and when it met with the fire, it caused a huge explosion. Firefighters worked tirelessly to battle the blaze and rescue guests. However, the fire department's ladder could only reach to the 8th floor. They eventually were able to position a ladder on the roof of a nearby building to help rescue the guests that were on higher levels. However, some guests couldn't be reached by ladder, and they had no choice but to jump. The worst part was that the nets used to catch the people that jumped were not strong enough to withstand jumps of more than 70 feet. Most of the hotel rooms were occupied that tragic morning, and out of the 304 people that were inside the hotel, 119 died, including Mr. and Mrs. Winecoff. Additionally, 65 people were injured and 120 were rescued. Many of the bodies of the people who jumped were found in the sidewalks, the rooftop of nearby buildings, the alley, and on top of cars and fire trucks. Over the following days, the victims who died inside the hotel, mostly due to smoke inhalation, were identified and laid to rest. Most of the people who jumped from the building unfortunately didn't survive. However, there was a 41-year-old woman named Daisy McCumber who jumped from the 11th floor and survived. She suffered multiple fractures to her pelvis and her legs, and eventually she lost one of her legs, but she managed to survive and she lived to the age of 86. The moment she was falling down was captured in a picture by Arnold Harty. He later won the Pulitzer Prize in 1947. They never found out what caused the fire. Some believe it was a lighted cigarette or a match, but this tragic event led to changes in the fire safety regulation, such as mandatory fire escapes, multiple stairways, fireproof doors, fire alarms, and sprinkler systems. In 1994, a historic marker was dedicated to the victims, survivors, and firemen who fought the Winecoff fire. Following the fire, the hotel was reconstructed and reopened in 1951 as the Peachtree Hotel. Then, in 1967, it was donated to the Georgia Baptist Convention and it was used as a temporary housing for the elderly. After this, it was empty for 2 decades, and during the Olympics in 1996, the lobby area was used as a souvenir shop. Eventually, it was renovated, and in 2007, it opened its door as the Ellis Hotel. Many believe the hotel might be haunted by those who met a tragic end in that horrible fire. Guests and staff have reported seeing ghostly apparitions or shadowy figures. They also claim to hear the disembodied voices of women and children screaming, as well as the muffled voices of people shouting and heavy footsteps running down the hallways. Some even report smelling smoke. And it is also said that the fire alarm sometimes goes off at the same time the fire happened in 1946 for no apparent reason. From the outside, people claim to see faces in the window of people who appear to be screaming in pain and asking for help. I cannot imagine what all these people went through. Being stuck in a room filled with smoke and fire, it must have felt like they were in hell. How scary it must be to be stuck in that situation, knowing that you probably are going to die and that you are unable to help yourself or your loved ones, and the ones who survived the trauma must be horrible. As for the haunting of the Ellis Hotel, well, I think all that trauma could have left residual haunting. However, I hope that those who die are in peace and were able to move on. Thank you for being my plus one. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a ghost story or an urban legend that you would like to share with us, or if you want to show us how any of these legends look to you with your drawing or your art, please send them to us at Ivonneplusone@gmail.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time.